This is TWiT.
So the HomePod available for pre-order Friday, and will arrive Friday, February 9th, 2 weeks later. I will, of course, order one immediately. We saw the rumor that there would be 1 million available initially and a total of something like 12 million available for the year. I don't know how accurate that is. You, Renee, have heard the HomePod.
Yes.
And you said it sounds really good.
Compared to what was available when it was announced, which was June of 2017, it sounded way better than both the Sonos. Well, it sounded better than the Sonos and way better than the Echo. But since then, both companies have released new products. So I'm looking forward to testing it against Google Mac, Sonos
Max.
One, the Echo. Is it the Echo 2?
The second generation Echo is supposed to be better, and the Echo Home sounds pretty good. That's probably the one I'll compare it with. It is, after all, only 7 inches tall. It's hard to make a really good speaker system that's compact like that. It has a woofer that fires up, which is interesting. 6 microphone array, 7 tweeters around the base. It has an A8, which is a pretty powerful chip for a speaker. We have made a mock-up of the speaker to give you some idea of its size and shape. I think this is a roll of toilet paper inside here. I don't know. And I apologize for the poor caricature of the Apple logo.
That's the silver, not the space gray, right?
Yes, this is the silver one. So I was going to order 2. I think I may still order 2, but the Apple says that the previously announced ability to do multi-room play, synchronized play, and pair up and become a stereo set when you have 2 of them in the same room will not come till later in the year.
So, I mean, a lot of this deals with AirPlay 2, and AirPlay 2 I think is just in the latest beta, but it was in previous betas and it was pulled, and that's the feature that's going to enable multi-room. The stereo thing I think is a little bit confusing because the HomePod does computational audio where it's bouncing things off the walls and figuring out where to play sounds in a room. So it sounds like, it doesn't sound like stereo. I think is completely the wrong terminology, and I'm not sure why Apple is using it.
Yeah, Apple's using it. It says this is from the press release. If there's more than one HomePod set up in the same room, the speakers can be set up as a stereo pair for even more.
Which I'm confused about, because originally, like when I heard it, it definitely sounded like full room audio. It didn't sound like it was coming from one side. And my understanding was you'd add extra ones to increase the volume. Like if you had a really large room and you wanted to fill it, you could put 2, 3, 4 in, and they would understand that they were there, and they would expand the scope of this 360 audio. So I'm not. I have to ask Apple what they mean by stereo in this context.
I do have to say that this is something I'm gonna have to really follow closely, because it's not the only speaker that adapts its acoustics to fit whatever space it's in. Other speakers, particularly, they want to be aware: is the speaker in a corner? Is the speaker in the middle of nowhere? And I don't. I'll be very, very pleased if it can deliver the sort of audio experience of 2 separate speakers. I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that it'll be excellent sound, but I have spent like the past several months since HomePod was first announced, intentionally trying to get in as many like $300 to $400 like 2 speaker systems in the office, and comparing that to like a Sonos, comparing that to whatever good stuff I can get my hands on, and none of them can really fill a room and make you feel like you're in the middle of an engineered sound space like 2 separate speakers a distance apart placed somewhere sensible inside the room. So we're gonna have to see how that works. And it should also be mentioned that you really have to compare apples to apples here. A single people are I think today people are using a single speaker differently than someone who wants to have a 2 speaker setup. They don't necessarily want that really rich stereo environment. They just want, this really weird, bizarre L-shaped room to have some good music in it, and maybe they're not even going to be sitting in the sweet spot, so to speak. I mean, they're going to be laying in bed while this thing is like someplace off in the corner. So it's not even necessary that it replace that kind of stereo thing. I just think that we should make sure that we have the correct expectations for what we're about to see. I think that good sound is really all we can count on.
You're probably accurate that people don't listen that way, and if you did, and there are people who do, who want to sit down on a sofa and have stereo speakers, you're not going to be doing it with a HomePod anyway. this is a different use case.
Well, it's possible it could be like I am terrible at music. I have a design background, not an audio background. I'm terrible at it, but it might just be cleaner because when you're throwing audio through a room from a single source, maybe it bleeds, or I don't know what the right terms are. I really am.
I mean, if you're an audiophile, you're adjusting. You know, even at a consumer range, you know, most stereo systems, most receivers have something like Odyssey is one technology that has a microphone that you place at the seating position and it tunes the speakers. I mean, this is not anything new, and I'm sure if you're an audiophile, you know exactly what you're doing, and you're probably using a sound pressure meter and all sorts of stuff to.
You have 9.1. You're not worried about any single speaker.
Well, maybe you do. You know, I think a lot of purists say, no, let's do stereo. Let's not do surround sound.
Well, they have vinyl speakers, right? I mean, that's what I.
Yeah, they have vinyl speakers. Andy just bought a record player, so you know,
it just arrived today.
That's cool.
But yeah, this is why audio is such an exciting category right now. We're kind of redefining what good audio means. Where people absolutely want the best quality sound. If they have a chance to test out like a Sonos versus the HomePod, and they like one better, they're not going to simply say the sound quality doesn't matter. However, I mean, I myself am surprised. I don't have like all my audio stuff set up in the bedroom, for instance, yet. So all I really have is a Google Home speaker, and I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying just like as I'm reading in bed or something. It's okay that I'm not getting the Budokan like Stonehenge like speakers room filling experience. All I want is something. It's okay for it to be a mono source, but to be really good, rich sound. And this is coming from a speaker the size of a cantaloupe that costs $129, $150. So it's a new metric, and I'm really excited to see what Apple's doing with HomePod.
$349 US, white and space gray, US, UK, Australia, pre-order Friday. At that price point, you know, I mean, I think people put them in every room. Is it Renee? You think more about Siri or more about music or both?
So, well, one thing I think Apple really is positioning this as like if you look at AirPods. Sorry, those are close band. They're a music first device, but they also put Siri literally right into your ears. And this is wideband. Like this is far range. This is beamforming microphones. This is something like technology that Echo has been using for a long time, and Google is put into Google Home. It's putting Siri on a device that can actually hear you. If we have music blaring and I'm standing next to Andy and I say, "Hey Shlomo, do this," Shlomo can hear me even if Andy necessarily can't distinguish what I'm saying, and that requires this hardware. But I think it's very similar right now to AirPods, where to Andy's point, for someone who really wants to go to the trouble of setting up a Dolby Atmos system and 9.1 sound and have the perfect room, that's fine. But many people can't or just don't want to have to go to the effort of wiring all that up. And they could put a single, you tap your iPhone to set it up, and it uses computational audio the way that depth effect, that portrait mode on a phone uses computational photography. Yes, you can get the big DSLR and all the lenses and learn how to shoot and do all that and get a nice portrait photo, or you can use your iPhone and get one that for most people is emotionally at least good enough. And this will give really good enough audio. But it sounds like Apple is really tuning this as music first. Like they've invested heavily in Siri, but it's in building out Siri's domain knowledge about music so that it is you can never say bulletproof with anything that's server side, but that it really understands deep context and metadata and information about music, and it'll be really like a first class musical assistant. And they've added HomeKit functionality to it, but I think that's sort of stage 2. And this is going to be, as is often the case with Apple, an iterative process where, like Apple Watch version 1, Leo, we talked about this many times compared to where it is now. I think we'll see HomePod as sort of Apple's first step into this.
Do you think they'll do a range of bigger and smaller speakers as Google and Amazon have done?
I don't know how much we'll do. I think they'll bring something in underneath, because I think there's a large umbrella underneath $350 for a speaker, and there's room to have something there. But I also think they'll iterate quickly on this, and maybe we'll get Series 2 and Series 1 HomePod next, and the cheaper will be Series 1. But also there's the Siri kit right now is very bare bones. Like it'll do some things, but it won't do ride sharing, for example. It'll do things like you can use messenger apps. You can I can say WhatsApp Andy, blah, 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 and it'll do that for me fine. So it'll integrate with all messaging apps, but it doesn't have a very wide range of integrations yet.
What is the support for this? This is the Siri kit that Apple wants third parties to adopt. What does the support for this look like? Are there a lot of SiriKit apps now?
Not so far. So Apple has a very different approach to Amazon, and I mean they both have pros and cons. Amazon's let them do incredibly rapid deployment, but Brian Romelli, who's really good at Voice First, had a good analogy. He said, like, if you got in first with pizza, too bad if you're Domino's or Pizza Hut, because that first developer owns pizza on Alexa, and that's going to be something that Amazon has to fix eventually. Apple is building these things out very slowly. And doing a lot of contextual domain knowledge on them, but it's probably too slowly because, as far as I know, there's to-dos. It'll integrate with things like OmniFocus and things, and there's messaging, so it'll integrate with things like Skype and WhatsApp and other different. In addition to iMessage, but there's just so much else out there.
In their PR, it says SiriKit messaging, lists, and notes, and that's it. So that means
it really needs music. Like
you couldn't make a restaurant reservation. You couldn't.
Not yet, no.
Yeah, it's going to be fairly limited, although I suspect messaging lists and notes covers most of the use cases, even people with Amazon Echoes.
They set timers. I mean, that's what we saw based on the data.
And you can set a timer on this, right? I mean,
set timers, play music, all the basic stuff.
If you're an Apple Music user, this is definitely the right choice for you because of the direct integration to Apple Music.
Yeah, and there's some confusing language in there that I have to follow up on too about your iTunes library that I'm not clear if that's just iTunes in the cloud. So if you do pay for iTunes in the cloud, I have to figure out exactly what they mean by that. But if just from pure Apple Music context, it's basically you ask Siri for a song, and if that song is in the Apple, and the nice thing about
it. So if I run Apple's Music Match technology, would that mean that my entire library?
It's unclear to me. That's unclear to me. I want to find that out. But if you say, for example, play Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson or by Alien Ant Farm or by Glee, you'll get whatever version of the song you want. And you can ask for it in different ways and based on top charts and a vast array of different metrics.
Actually, I'm looking at the examples in the SiriKit. SiriKit's much more capable than the limited stuff it's going to allow the HomePod to do. You can make a voice call, you can get rides, but
it's not hard to see that stuff's all coming. It's just it has to get here.
So don't be fooled by the stuff you can do with Siri on the smartphone. It isn't the same as on the HomePod. It's not that full SiriKit integration.
One of the problems is that you never know which platform Siri can do what on, and that has to be fixed because if you can't rely on a technology to be there, you won't use it.